everyone. My name is Tori and I'm the incoming Executive Director of the Enid Symphony Orchestra. I have the privilege today of speaking with our maestro, Douglas Newell, of the Enid Symphony as well. It's lovely to speak with you today, Doug.
Well, good to be here with you.
Wonderful. So today we're going to talk about our final concert of the season on Saturday, May 13th, featuring Caroline Cox Turek on violin. We'll also be talking about the transition of leadership for next year, along with next year's season. So before we begin, I'd like to thank our sponsors for this upcoming concert. They are the Dr. Burt Clampett Memorial Fund, the Oklahoma Arts Council, and the National Endowment for the Arts, and of course with assistance from Enid's own Park Avenue Thrift. So welcome, Doug. So before we talk about our concert, I think for our viewers, we need to clear up some misconceptions about what this transition of leadership and position is for next year. So you are not retiring.
I am not retiring. Nagada. I am not retiring. I am becoming the artistic director, which means I'll plan the programs and be the conductor of the Enid Symphony Orchestra, just as I have been for a few years. But for the past few years, however many that is, I've also had the position of the executive director. And about 5 years ago, we developed a succession plan whereby if something unseemly or untimely happened to me before my real expiration date, there would be a way of furthering the Enid Symphony Orchestra. So then we had that occurrence of the pandemic, and I was just sort of keep it viable, keep it alive, keep it going. And so we didn't make any plans for transitions. Well, this past fall, we were lucky to have Tori and her husband moved to Alva, Oklahoma, where Eduardo's the professor of piano at Northwestern Oklahoma State University, and where Tori is the adjunct professor of flute there. And she has a bit of experience in orchestral management, personnel management, and she came to work for us as director of community outreach and
communications.
I created that title, but anyway.
It's a long one.
Anyway, it became pretty obvious that she, speaking of the person to my immediate, that one, yes, that she has excellent talents, capabilities in leadership and executive management. So I made the decision to approach the board in December about making her executive director and making my life easier. My wife says it won't be because I'll never quit worrying about money, but that's the way it is. So we're excited to have Tori on board. So there will be a team. Instead of me going to work and looking in the mirror and complaining about things, I'll have someone to go to work and speak with and say, I have this issue with this particular problem. Help me out here. So I'm very excited about this. It's my idea, and if anyone else drives up next to me at Brahms and says, hey, how's retirement going?
Oh, goodness.
I'm going to look the other way, but anyway.
Right, exactly. And, I'm also very excited for this new transition. We've been collaborating with each other for the past several months now, so I'm very excited for what we have in store for next season. Lots of exciting projects, featuring our youth, working with the youth in the community, really expanding our Enid Symphony to all of Northwest Oklahoma. So I'm very excited to work with you on these projects and to also further serve our local community. So lots of exciting things. And if you take away one thing from this, Doug Newell is not retiring. He is leveling up to artistic director.
There you go.
There we go.
And we even dress alike. I mean, we not only think alike, we show up at the office together, and of course, we're color coordinated without trying, so this just happened, folks.
Right, exactly. So wonderful. Okay, cool. So now that we've sort of have that cleared up and kind of explained to our listeners.
And we both have brown hair.
Yes, long brown hair. We look exactly
Absolutely.
alike. Wonderful, wonderful. So let's go ahead and talk about the upcoming concert on May 13th. So we've got a bunch of interesting repertoire choices on this program. We've got 2 pieces by American composers. We have one by a Czechoslovakian composer, but this all somehow relates back to our season theme of horizons and Oklahoma heritage. So maybe could you elaborate on this connection, the repertoire pieces?
Sure. It is not a far stretch to connect the music with Antonin Dvorak, one of the most famous classical composers of all time, with the music of Oklahoma Native American composer Louis Ballard. Dvorak came to America to be the president or the director of the National Conservatory of Music, which later became the Juilliard School of Music in New York City. He was a composer of international reputation, and one of the things that he did was to incorporate Czech Slavic folk music into his classical music. It's simply because they're the tunes people know. Well, he came to America, and of all things, he had, with all of his American students, he had the great African-American student, H.T. Burleigh, Harry Burleigh. And Harry is the one who actually taught him spirituals and work songs, and he set them in his 9th symphony, the New World Symphony he called it, or From the New World. It's a Czech symphony supposedly, and yet it's chock full of American folk tunes. And in fact, the second movement is entirely based upon this spiritual going home. Well, Dvorak in a very important speech indicated that what is natural to a people is the music that springs up in the folk tradition, is the music that must be observed and which is the foundation for their classical music. So that this particular speech has been around for years in classical circles, since I believe it was given in 1904. Louis Ballard, Oklahoma composer Louis Ballard, he passed in 2007, I believe.
Yes.
He studied in France with Darius Milhaud. He was a student at the Aspen Music School in Colorado. He was very inspired by Dvorak saying that the future of American classical music lies in its folk music. And so he, for the 60th anniversary of statehood, was commissioned to write a piece and chose to write, the first part of it is really about the land run and the statehood, but that's only a minor part of his ballet. The bulk of the ballet is about the 5 Native American ballerinas from Oklahoma who became internationally famous in the I think it's towards the end of the 30s through the 60s. They are from Fairfax, Maria and Marjorie Tallchief, Moshelin Larkin, Yvonne Choteau. And name the 5th ballerina for me.
Rosella
Hightower. Yes. Very good. She's from Oregon, folks, and she knows this. So Louis Ballard's ballet was entitled The Four Moons, and it's the 4 tribes. There were 5 ballerinas, but remember the Tallchief sisters represent one of the moon. So it's an extremely interesting piece of music that was actually performed once in Tulsa. Then it was performed at the opening of the University of Oklahoma School of Ballet in the late 60s. And in fact, in our symphony audience, we have several ladies who studied with one of these Native American ballerinas. Yvonne Choteau, for example, as a 10-year-old, danced in the living room of the home where Luana and I live on Winona Avenue.
That personal connection as well.
Very much so. Yvonne's mother insisted that even though she had a great interest in ballet, that she learn the native dances and tour the state performing in the native dress. And Mrs. J.W. Hill, who built our home, founded the first opera company in Oklahoma, as a matter of fact, here in Enid, but also would bring entertainments into the home. And it has a sunken living room, so the dining area is like a stage area. And we have a picture from one of the older Enid newspapers of 10-year-old Yvonne Choteau dancing in our living room. It's absolutely fascinating. So Louis Ballard's music incorporates each character dance of the 4 tribes, so to speak, that are represented by the ballerinas. He uses a tribal melody and rhythm in his music. Now, it doesn't sound like old Western Native American music accompaniments that you will hear. It's really quite well developed and worked out. The piece actually was sent to the Philadelphia Free Library a number of years ago, and there never was really an edited score in parts. Well, I found out about this last summer and contacted the library, and so they were also in the process of creating it for a recording to be made by the Fort Smith Symphony, which was made on the weekend of April 22nd, our last performance here. But this will be the first time the piece has been performed in Oklahoma since the 1960s. And we're very proud of that. As for Dvorak and the Oklahoma connection, Dvorak was Czechoslovakian, as we said, and during the summers when he wasn't in class at teaching at the National Conservatory in New York City, he would travel to the Czech settlement in Spillville, Iowa. Now, it is known that he and his family and citizens there would get together and take train trips to other Czech settlements in the United States. And in fact, there's very good evidence that he came to Yukon and on the way came through Enid, Oklahoma at some point.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, it's not terribly far-fetched. There's a little more research to do on that, but nonetheless, there is that kind of supposed connection anyway, and we'll see if we can verify that. But
because it'd be wonderful to have because he's one of the most well-known composers in all of the classical repertoire, Antonin Dvorak, and we typically think of him as being a Czechoslovakian European composer, and not only to have these strong ties to American culture, but to actually have traveled through Oklahoma. It's pretty incredible, pretty serendipitous, So I think it'd be great if we could explore that and
We're going to open the program with a Czech dance composed by Dvorak, and then we're going to go right into the Native American music of Louis Ballard. And then I get to do something that it's always a joy. I get to conduct with my teacher playing as a soloist. I've had several teachers that have appeared with the orchestra over the years, which is it's just always a joy. But she's more than just Doug's violin teacher. She is a phenomenal talent. Caroline Cox Turek is going to play an American violin concerto, not European repertoire, an American concerto by the composer Samuel Barber. Samuel Barber, I believe, passed away in the 80s, but he was also one who studied internationally, and he wrote this extremely beautiful and very American-sounding music for the violin and orchestra. And then for the first 2 movements, and then the third movement of the concerto, it's in the classical 3-movement concerto form. The last movement is one of the most difficult things we've ever had a soloist program, and one of the most difficult accompaniments the orchestra will ever have played. And we're going to make it work. You give these wonderful musicians a real challenge, and they'll show up ready to do it. You give them things that they love to play and that challenge them, and they're professional. They really rise to the occasion every time. So I'm extremely excited about working with Caroline in this. She's been here 3 years. She and her husband Spencer came to Vance Air Base just about 3 years ago, and we met, and I found out she taught, and anyhow, she's a marvelous player.
Yes.
She has some very hard-working students. I can vouch for that. But
can imagine.
Anyway, that is the concert. Dvorak, Lewis Ballard, Native American, and American, Samuel Barber.
Yeah. And I do want to highlight for our listeners, we also featured Caroline on our concert back in January on the Vivaldi Four Seasons. So this will be the second time that she is sort of solo with us.
Actually, the third, because before you came, and during the pandemic,
before my time.
Before your time. One of the concerts we performed at Government Springs Park in the gazebo, we featured her playing some program of gypsy music.
Oh, okay.
She played, so this is great. Unfortunately, she and Spencer will be moving in June or July. His tour is up here, and they're going to go back to my hometown, Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh, wow. So, how funny that coincidence.
Yeah, well, all things come and go through Charlotte.
Yes. So just speaking about the difficulty of the Barber, because our listeners don't really have the chance to experience our rehearsal before the concert. So we have one rehearsal prior to the concert. We create, as I'm sure our audience can vouch for, we create such artistry on the stage, and we put it together in one rehearsal the afternoon before the concert. So now we have an incredibly difficult piece on it's known for its difficulty, the Barber Violin Concerto, as you were saying, for both the orchestra and the soloist. So when you are approaching a piece of that difficulty in just one rehearsal, what are some things that you think about? What are some challenges in that preparation, would you say?
Well, the first thing you have to do is go through the piece and play it so that everybody gets an understanding of how it all fits together. And then you can go back and rehearse the difficulties. You have to have those identified in your mind even before rehearsal. And sometimes you get there and what you think is going to pose a little problem just works. And sometimes things you don't think will necessarily be a problem are. So, we will probably spend an hour, 10, 15 minutes on this 22-minute piece of music, refining it. But as I said, everybody will come prepared. It's a very funny story why it's so difficult. Samuel Barber was a student at the Curtis Institute of Music in Philadelphia when he was commissioned to write a piece for an up-and-coming violinist whose father was very wealthy and paid a handsome sum to have Barber write the music. Well, he wrote the first two movements and sent it to the family, and the boy plays through them and says, well, it's not really challenging, it's just beautiful music. And so Barber went back and decided, well, I'll show him. So he wrote something that looks to be unplayable and took it back. Kid couldn't play it. Said, it's unplayable, we're not paying the commission. And so Barber went back to school and got a classmate, and they sat down and prepared it and went in and played it for him. As it turned out, a very famous violinist at the time, Albert Spaulding, I believe, premiered the concerto with the Philadelphia Orchestra with Eugene Ormandy. I think that's correct. But anyway, I'm sure the listeners will write into ETV and Enid Communications.
Curtis
say Doug needs to do a little more research. But anyhow.
Well, Curtis is in Philadelphia?
Yes.
Yeah, so that would make sense.
Not a stretch.
Yes.
Not a stretch.
It's better than Chicago.
But I read it at 3 a.m. if it's true. So anyway, there's this incredibly difficult concerto that people said, oh, that can't be played. Well, if you're as fine a violinist as Caroline is, it can be played, and it will be played very well. I listened to it just after my lesson last week, and it's going to be very exciting.
Oh yes, it's definitely going to be a very enjoyable experience, and it's such a wonderful culmination of this year's season, you know, culminating with a very exciting repertoire in general, you know, with all of these Oklahoma American connections, finishing out this season very excitingly. So that's sort of how we're going to wrap up this season. Maybe can you tell us a little bit about what we can expect for next season?
I can.
That's wonderful.
Would you like me to?
That would be much appreciated.
Because you didn't ask. But anyway.
I apologize. Will you please tell us about...
We have a good working relationship.
We do.
You have to believe this. We're going to open with none other than a play about the singing rage Miss Patti Page, Oklahoman, who was in the 50s and into the 60s, one of the most well-known singing recording artists in the United States. Greg White of the faculty at the University of Central Oklahoma wrote a musical. He really scripted it from conversations with Patti Page. All of the music are Patti Page songs. It'd be just a studio band, not the full symphony orchestra, but that'll open the season. Then we're going to have welcome another Oklahoma artist, Matt Denman, who teaches at Oklahoma City University, teaches guitar, and we're going to have sort of a Latin night. Maybe we'll serve margaritas will be the specialty. Ooh. Then in November, Handel's Messiah, so we're putting the band back together. Or we're putting the Enid Symphonic Choir back together to perform Handel's Messiah with the symphony. Also, we're going to take it to Alva.
We are.
We may even take it to Woodward. You know, we've been there before with it, and
it's our Handel tour.
Great reception when we travel with Handel. So, and then in February, we're featuring our concertmaster of the symphony, Ty Myers, in a performance of the Scheherazade by the Russian composer Rimsky-Korsakov. It's the tale of 1,001 nights, Arabian Nights, set to music by Rimsky-Korsakov. Then in March, we're going to perform, put an accent on youth, we're going to perform with members of the Enid Youth Symphony invited to come in and play what we call a side-by-side concert. We'll put a student with each professional player in the sections. And we're also having at that time a youth concerto winner. So we'll have an audition, I believe, in January, February. And choose a winner from up through high school age from Oklahoma. And that young person will perform with the symphony on that performance in March. And then in April, we're going to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Enid Symphony Center and Joan Allen Symphony Hall, opening the concert with a piece of music entitled Fanfare for Joan, which will be composed this year. We don't know yet what it will sound like, but it will be premiered at that performance. We're going to engage an American composer to write this piece of music. And also, we're going to bring back one of the most esteemed classical artist we've ever had the pleasure of working with, Edward Auer. He came in a couple of years ago, well, last year at the end of the season, and finished the season on about 36 hours notice. We had a guest artist cancel, and they canceled at the last minute, which is not a good thing. But nonetheless, we were able to attract him. He's internationally known for his as a pianist, and we decided we're going to bring him back to finish next season. So I'm just extremely excited about the cultural possibilities here in Enid. There is fine art, there's fine culture in Enid. It's at the Enid Symphony Center. All you have to do is buy a ticket and come listen.
Exactly. And so now that we have our season announced for next year, we are just talking about tickets and subscriptions for next year. We are asking our subscribers who are current season subscribers to renew their seats by June 1st. And then they can continue to do so afterwards, but then June 15th, that's when we're going to start opening reserved seating for new season subscribers. So definitely if you want to renew, which I think would be wonderful, we have an incredibly exciting season, one of the most exciting seasons I think that we've had in a very long time coming up. So definitely get your ticket renewals in ASAP. We're going to open up the new season subscriptions June 15th, and then single tickets will be on sale in August. So it'll be a few months before that happens, but definitely be thinking about getting your tickets and getting them early.
There's a bigger demand already for new subscribers, and we're very excited about that. That's why we delay single ticket purchases, because we rely on that subscriber base as the first impetus for income for the new year. We open our fiscal year on July 1st, when you get the big chair.
Yes.
And so
very, very exciting times, very exciting times. And we really, if you're a regular symphony goer, we really encourage you to purchase a season ticket over individual single tickets per concert, because I believe you save, I think we calculated 60%, as opposed to buying 5 or 6 single tickets, you've saved 60% of what you would spend on a season ticket. So it's definitely huge savings. So definitely check out our website, go online to enidsymphony.org for ticket pricing and everything like that, and definitely consider becoming a season subscriber. So speaking of which, our fiscal year is going to end July 1st, June 30th?
It's June 30th. We go actually with I believe the state operates on a fiscal year of July 1 to June 30th. We do that because we have a National Endowment for the Arts and state funding with us, and just makes it easier to account.
Yes.
To do the accounting and all.
Right, definitely. So speaking of which, we're gearing up for next year and ticket sales and everything. So if you do want to give a gentle reminder to our supporters, and we're so thankful for your continued support and patronage of the Enid Symphony. If you do have outstanding pledges that maybe you made earlier in the year and haven't done so yet, if you could be sure to send in those pledges before the end of June. That way we can get them in and get them situated before the end of this fiscal year. That would be absolutely wonderful and much appreciated. So in addition to that, can you describe a little bit about how the orchestra's funding, how donations work, patronage works? Well,
we have our budget for the Enid Symphony Orchestra is about $360,000 a year. It takes that to produce the concerts which we present. Some of the concerts are underwritten, such as the July 4th concert is underwritten by Security National Bank. The cost of the orchestra, the cost of the sound system for the park is underwritten by a grant from Park Avenue Thrift. So that one is a wash. We have a Harvest Wine series of 4 concerts. They're sort of chamber, smaller concerts in the month of August. They're underwritten by a grant from or by marketing with Edward Jones agents in Enid.
Yes.
Then we start our season, and we have corporate sponsors for concerts, as well as single ticket sales and a portion of subscription sales. We have income from the National Endowment and the State Arts Council, which makes it sound like, oh, you've got it paid for. Well, when you're dropping $30,000 a night for an orchestra and guest artist, and you have an income about 16, you've got to raise the rest of it somewhere else. So we do other things. We rent the facilities of the Enid Symphony Center. Rentals have been tremendous this year.
It's a beautiful place for weddings.
It's a beautiful place for weddings, for
conferences,
small
banquets.
proms, banquets, what have you. Birthday parties, quinceañeras, we love that.
Oh yes, those are so fun.
But then we also sell advertising in the program guide each year for the Enid Symphony subscription concerts. And then we have our annual fund drive in November and December. And that nets probably another 20%, 22 or 3% of our annual operating budget. So we have a very well laid out plan of how through the year expenses are matched by an ongoing sources of income coming in. So the term nonprofit merely means we're not allowed to carry over more than 10% of what we make, and that's very difficult, but it means you spend what you bring in, which is donated for that purpose, and we do. So we've been very fortunate.
Yes, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, and we do have so much support from individuals and families in our communities, and we really thank you all for your continued support. And if you haven't done so yet, perhaps consider making a donation to the Symphony. I believe 10 to 20% of our income comes from ticket sales.
Just about 20%, and that's even higher than the national average. So.
Yes. So we do rely quite a bit on donations and patronage beyond ticket sales. So I'd like to implore our listeners to consider making a donation to the Symphony. We are a nonprofit organization. We are the first civic orchestra in the state of Oklahoma. We do have a rich heritage, but we are a nonprofit, and we do want to continue supporting our musicians and our wonderful staff and bringing art to the community. So that's all that I have for today, Doug. Do you have anything that you would like to add before we wrap up for today?
I think I've said enough, probably.
You said all of...
I maybe have digressed too much, but I don't think it's such an important thing.
No, it gives us a chance to also, it's not just getting up on stage and playing music, it's also educating our viewers in our community on these pieces, on art in the community. It really brings it to the next level when it's not just you're sitting there listening to music. It's an educational experience. You're meeting with your community. So I think it's great. I'm excited for this concert. I know I'm a little biased, but I think it's going to be a fantastic show. So that's all that we have time for today. We do encourage you, if you're still interested in purchasing a ticket for the concert, they are selling fast, but we do have some tickets still available. So definitely go to our website at www.enidsymphony.org or give our office a call at 580-237-9646 for more information on tickets and the concert. So thank you so much for joining me today, Doug.
You.
This was a pleasure as always, and thank you all so much for joining us.